Welcome back, Rabbi Dr. Eliezer Brut. It's a pleasure to have you here as we approach Pesach to discuss the earliest source of stealing the Afikoman and what the history books tell us all about this exciting minig that gets the kids all excited during the Seder. And we thank our sponsor, Ellie and Eva Gennaro of Boca Raton, Florida, who are dedicating this episode in memory of Haisha Rivka Bas Harav Avram Akayin, Mrs. Ruth Gennaro of Seattle, Washington, whose first yahrzeit is Ches Nisan. May her neshama have an aliyah, and all the learning should be a schos for her neshama. We thank the Gennaros for the dedication. So, Rabbi Brat, what could you share with us as we begin this episode? I just want to say before we begin, please, if you'd like to get Rabbi Brat's email of Svarim and Contrasim and all kinds of interesting things and paraphernalia he sends out before Yantif, I don't think it's too late yet for this Yantif. Please email him, eliezerbrud@gmail.com, eliezerbrud@gmail.com. You can email me, shwaidem@ou.org, with any questions, comments, suggestions, if you would like to make a dedication towards any of our future episodes. Without further ado, Rabbi Brut, what is the earliest source for stealing the Afikoman, and how has it become a very, very exciting part of the Seder? And Baruch Hashem, many Svarim stores and toy stores make good parnasa from this minig.
Okay, so that is a great question, and we hope to get to answer very quickly. Okay, but first, before anything, you want to know this minig of stealing the Afikoman, where children plan this well in advance. When's the best time to steal it? When's the father not looking? What to ask for? Okay, that's what we hope to discuss, and a little bit more insight into the Seder, actually. Okay, so Lamashal, one of the ways when you want to find out if a minig was done and stuff like that is you look in, it's called autobiographical or memoir literature. So we have various sources that show that they were doing this thing of stealing the Afikoman. Lamashal, Rebbetzin Ruchama Shane describes how she stole the Afikoman when she was young, and her father, the famous Rabbi Akiva of Herman, known as the Chafetz Chaim of America, promised her a gift if she gave it back. There was a Yid, Alexander Ziskin Horowitz, who wrote a Yiddish memoir about his life. He lived a long life, and he wrote a long memoir about it. It was originally, as I said, in Yiddish. It gets recently translated into English. Describes life in the 1860s and onwards, and he talks about stealing the Afikoman, and he says like this: he stole it. Then his father said he asked for a present, a sack of walnuts that his father gave him. He gave back the Afikoman to his father. But he said their minig was that the Seder cannot continue unless the Afikoman is found and eaten. So I had the upper hand. But my father said with me that if I were to steal the next night, the second Seder, I would have to eat the entire Afikoman all by myself. So the second night, he did not really, he was scared to steal the Afikoman. Anyway, because it was done. Many sources for this. Lamashal in the 1880s, a Litvish autobiography from Benjamin Gordon, a doctor. He describes how him and his mother helped him steal it. The Hungarian Gadol, Rabbi Eliezer Shlomo Schick, describes in Hungary his mother encouraged him to steal it and to ask for his father something. There numerous sources for such a thing in this type of literature. We're not going to list out all of them. Okay, now, so it was done. But is everyone pro this minig, so to speak? So interestingly enough, I'm sure I'm going to mention briefly in a few minutes some people that were against it, some gedolim, but here's a tshuva. The tshuva it was written to, I believe, Rev Yehuda, Rabbi Yisrael David Yafa Schlesinger, or Margolis, different names. He was a Talmud of the Chassam Sofer, born in 1802, dies in the 1860s, and we quoted him in some other episodes, even in the Banging of Haman. He has some interesting tshuvas, and one of them was, someone seems to ask him the question, what's this minig, what's up with the various things we do at the Seder, such as Chagadia and Echemiyadeya, what's behind these songs? And the longer question that this person had asked is, what's going on with stealing Afikoman? And the person writes, Gneva Asurlanu Beimi Yisrael Oimei Nachri V'Gneva's guy he beloisa say come over Berambam, but even Miata Loy Timsa Shum Gneva Muteris Lanu Beimi Yisrael Oimei Nachri V'Chein Hagoinev Lemeka to Amanas LaHachser Gnevi. So Madua Nagu Belel Shimurim Lilmoides Atinaikis Lignevas Afikoman Atzniai. So first of all, you see that in the early 1800s they're doing this, but what's going on? Why you're teaching them how to steal? And we know that's not a proper thing. So we see already then that there were people that were concerned that there's a problem of this minig, which is teaching the kids to steal. Lamaisa, we find in later, much later than him, but let's say the Chazon Ish, the Stipler, Shem Zalman Orbach, Lubavitcher Rebbe, someone sent me, Rav Steinman says this, and others, that they were against steal. They were against this minig specifically because you're teaching the kids to steal. Rav Kapach says such a thing, and in Taimon they didn't do it. Rav Shem Tev Gagan writes, Svardim did not have this custom, it's not a Svardim minig. Okay. So we see there's some type of opposition. Okay. Now, the Lemaisa, Rav Schlesinger, or Margolis, however you want to call him, in his tshuva, he has a whole arichos trying to explain. In general, he defends a lot of minhagim in his various writings, and here also he has a whole Torah to explain what's going on behind Afikoman. But he is using drush and even Kabbalah in his thing. I'm going to try to be much more pashut and some sources which probably he did not have all of them, and that's why he didn't say what I'm going to discuss. Okay. But before we get to him, was there any other opposition? So there's a sefer I've quoted in the past a few times from Aaron of Metz, the Moiriyar. He brings down, again, also against this thing of children teaching them to steal. It's minig badui vehevel. It's a goyish minig, and not only that, he says that goyim here sheyehudim loimdim ladeim to steal lignoy zeichel etzis mitzrayim, and therefore you should refrain from doing it. Okay. Now, what does he mean? So it's possible that what's going on over here is that lamashal. One source for minhagim that's used by different people is what mushumadim record after they went off. Then they talk about their life as a Jew before they went off. So some people, from people also, they use these type of sources to, again, not paskening anything, but it helps sometimes to understand things. So Lamashal, in 1738, one of these such works, writes a detailed description. He describes the stealing of Afikoman by the youngest child, and he gets a reward from his father. And what's the reason? The reason is to teach the child to remember that what the Yidden did in Mitzrayim, that they borrowed from the Mitzrayim and they ran away with the items. Now we know they weren't doing anything wrong. Chas v'shalom, they were fulfilling what the Torah said, but that could possibly be what the concern of this Moiriyar is, and some other people. Similarly, is the Chavos Yair also. He brings down Taka that the minig was the children did do it, but he says, and it could be similar to this Moiriyar. That's the reason. Anyway, so we're giving more to the story behind the psakim of Rav Shlomo Zalman. These other gedolim that they were. It's not only stealing. There's something really behind not to do this minig. Okay, but Lamaisa, the question is, many Jews do it. Where could we trace this back? Okay, so in most Rishonim and the early Paiskim, describing the part of the Seder called Yachatz, we find what happens. We break the matzah. Then we find that some go as far as to say that the person who leads the Seder puts it on his shoulders and he walks with a bit with it, saying this is how we went out in Mitzrayim. Others did this only later on when they're about to do the Afikoman. But B'kitzur, this is what was done, Yachatz, and then we break it, the bigger half and the smaller half, and we put away, whatever. Okay. Now, some mention putting it under a pillow to watch it, but there's no mention in almost all the Rishonim, and we have detailed lists of Rishonim and talking about it at this point already early on to say the Yachatz. They don't talk about children stealing it, l'chayra. Okay, fast forward, but we're looking for, is there any early sources? So when I was looking into this topic many years ago, someone sent me possibly the earliest sources like this. There's many illustrated Haggadahs. What does that mean? That even before the printing press, there were Haggadahs, and they have all types of pictures, which is a whole fascinating story worthy of many different shiur. But one of them is known as the Second Nuremberg Haggadah, which is written between the years 1450 and 1500. It has illustrations, and in there we see the boy puts out his hand to get the Afikoman from his father, and later on it says, right by Tzafin, the leader asks for the Afikoman that the boy had hidden. So we see already somewhere between 1450 and 1500 some mention. Okay, but Lamaisa, besides for this work, later on we don't find it. As I said, let's marshal if you look in Shulchan Aruch, Ramah, we don't find this minig. Another thing is, there's a famous illustrated Haggadah, one of the earliest printed Haggadahs with pictures. It's known as the Prague Haggadah of 1526, 1527, and there's many pictures in there. There's no picture of this. Okay. Another interesting marmakim, just to throw out there, is that there's a Sefer Chag Pesach which was published in about 1597, so it's a little after the Mamish, a little after the Shulchan Aruch. He talks about the Marshal. In the times of the Marshal was asked by someone where basically the mice ate the Afikoman and there was nothing left. That means they put it in the pillow under the table, and the mice came and ate it. So there was nothing left for them. So you see that in let's say 1597, the Shiloh was asked the Marshal wherever he was. They didn't hide it. It was just put in a pillow and left under the table, under the pillow of the Balabai. So, but what we don't see anything about it being stolen. Okay. So what's the earliest source? We do find such a thing. So if you open up your Shulchan Aruch, in Shulchan Aruch, Hilchas Pesach, we have a Gewaldike Be'indike Pirish from Rabbi Yaakov Reisher on Hilchas Pesach called Chak Yaakov. It's on the Tzuras Hadaf of most Shulchan Aruchs, and there he brings down. This is first published in 1696 in Dessau. The children had the minute to steal Afikoman. Okay, so here we have the first Makar in a halachic chibur that they did such a thing. A little later, in 1717, there's a chibur Noy Kitzon Yosef of Yosef Yuspa of Frankfurt. He also brings down this minig. And in more recent years, we have Rabbi Yaakov Emden. He brings down this minig also. And the Chavas Yair, which we quoted earlier, which was first published from manuscript in 1988, he also brings down that the children had this minig. Okay, Ad Kan, that there was such a minig, and now we have at least some chashav paiskim bringing it down. Now, the question is, but what's the source of this minig? What does the Chak Yaakov say? What's behind the minig? Or these other achronim? Do they give an insight behind this? So the answer is yes, and this is well known, is like this. There's a Gemara in Psachim Kuf Chav Ches Amud Beis Kuf Tes Amud Aleph that talks about Kol Chayav Barba Kaisis Halalu Echad Nashim Echad Anashim Echad Tinoikis. So one second, what do you mean? V'chi matayel is yesh l'tinoikis b'yayin. Ella, you don't give them one. Mechalkin len kloyes v'agoyizim be'erev Pesach. Kedei shelo yishnu, you give them nuts to keep them awake, and then it says, we grab the matzahs on the Leil Pesach so that the children shouldn't sleep. Okay, it's a cryptic line. The Gemara, obviously, you have to look into various Rishonim, but we have a Rambam. The Rambam in Hilchos Chametz Matzah, Perek Zayin Halacha Gimel says like this: Tzarich la'aseh shinui b'layla zeh kedei she'yira habanim v'yishalu v'yomer ma nishtan halayla zeh mikol leilas. Then he says, "V'keitz mechalek lem kloyes v'egoyizim." You give them nuts. And similar these other things. And then the Ram continues. So basically, the Rambam is saying we do different changes. Why? To have the children to be inspired to ask questions. So this is Vashteit and Rambam. The Rabbeinu Manoach brings a Tosefta, which might have such a gears of Chaytif, but what's going on over here is Shteit and Chak Yaakov is, if you look, Efsher Mizeh, from this Rambam, this Gemara, Mizeh Nispashad Aminik, Shemenichem Latinoikis, B'Medinas Elu, Lachtoif Afikoman, Shalidezeh, Lo Yishnu V'Yisayir L'Sho. It just got extended. Instead of the adults doing it, which is what it sounds like from the Gemara / Rambam, it's you had the kids do it, and this gets them to be all excited and to be awake during the Leil Hasid. I mentioned that a bunch of people say it, just to quote Tula Shainis, one of my favorite Haggadahs, the Marbel Saper from Rididya Tio Vail, the son of the Carbon Sanal, 1791, in his beautiful Haggadah says, we say, V'chol Marbel Saper b'tzias Mitzrayim hareizim shubach. What's going on? What's this lashon marba? So he says, Lafish Mashamr Chazal Moshiv Natinagas Kadesh Yishlu V'chein Hatibulim, and we do all different types of things, such as Kliyas Ve'goizim, so to keep them awake. Vanirlani is Daititim Zerem is Mashanoigin Lignoiva Afikoman. This is why they steal it. And then he says, that's Lashon HaMarba. We do all these types of things to keep them awake. Earlier, Rabbi Yaakov Emden in the Siddur. Now, this is not found in the Siddur, standard Rabbi Yaakov Emden Siddur. This you have to use the Eshkol Siddur, where they have a suffix that were only published in much more recent years. He says, Mashanoigin, it's Leno Ashkenazim, She'eladim Goyim V'Afikomen, Yesh Smach Lezeh, B'Gemara, Chaytim Matzes Below Psachim. So again, he's telling through this Gemara, and there's a long list of people who stel to this Gemara for this meaning. Okay. Lamaisa, many times you could find that it could even be earlier. And you say, of course, here we're telling to that this is Pshan the Gemara and this is the Rambam, but there's other people. Okay, and what am I referring to? So there's a fascinating. Sometimes you could have a gadol that B'chayav, he was an Adam gadol, very well known. Mamish well known, and today no one knows of him. Kamat, no one knows of him. Sometimes people heard of a work that he might have written, but he gets lost. One such person is a Yid Rav Yitzchak Chiyus. I'm going to quote to you a lashon in the Tzemach David. The Tzemach David, when he refers to about this Rav Yitzchak Chiyus, which we're about to read something from him, he says like this: Rav Yitzchak Chiyus, Harav Agadol, Asher Shmo Yatsa B'chol Tfutzis Yisrael, beyond famous, who him Talmidim Harbe Verbit Terbi Yisrael, and not only that, Chiber Sefer Pach Yitzchak, V'Sich Yitzchak, V'Sefer Pnei Yitzchak, V'Yuru Agadol. Okay, he came in Prague, B'Shnas Tuf. Shin Daled Mem, Rosh Hashiva, and he was here, and then he dies. Okay, fine. So he dies in Shin Mem Daled, it sounds like. Fine. And sorry, that's when he comes to Prague. Now, who is this Rabbi Yitzchak Chiyus? So people who learn Yeridea, you come across the Chibur Ape Ravravi. This is a Chibur the Shach handles a lot. The Magen Avram in Archaim brings down the Ape Ravravi in Yeridea. Anyway, less known is that this same Yid wrote, and as I just read from the Tzemach David, this is an account from that period of time. He was one of the Gedolei Rosh Hashivas, one of the Gedolei Olim. He's the head Rav of Prague, a great Rosh Hashiva. So one of the things is we have Sich Yitzchak, is a Chibur of his on the Leila Seder. It's incredible work. And over there we find that he wrote it's a piyutim, pismainim, l'shainis, and then he's mefarish the song that he wrote with all the halachas that he's being meramis, the halachas of the Leila Seder, and then he handles all the different things in them. This was a common thing that was done by many people in that kuf also, and then he talks about our discussion about Chaytfin min atinoikis. He's talking about our Gemara and Pesachim that we just mentioned. Then he says like this: V'chein marash darash the kol shinuyim sheyichayim lasis kedei sheishlo tinoikis yase u'meshubachu. All the things he could do that will get the kids into it, that they can ask questions. Meshubach kegoin lachtif masha biyadei kam sheyilchu v'yignevu ha'afikoman v'chayizrin v'chaytun mehen. Hakadosh Baruch Hu mesavel is that. Now, what's going on over here is he's saying pretty much there's some type of stealing of the Afikoman that's taking place at this point in the Seder, and this is, where is he quoting this from? Even earlier, he's quoting it from the Marash, the Rebbe of the Maril, that says over here, about the great Shinuyim, the kids get into it, it's all geschmack, it's happening. The Maril, the Talmud, the Marash also says the same thing, and that's what they did at the Seder. So what they did was, all these Shinuyim, including this, so it's really, this is what's going on in this Gemara, this not only the giving out of nuts, but it's also the grabbing, which the Gemara says, this is what's behind going on in the Gemara. It's all about, and this is, everyone knows, a lot of times you ask various questions in the Leila Seder. I'm going to list just a few of them shortly. What's the story? Why do we do this? It's very strange. It's not la halacha, whatever. And the answer you find in the Rishayim, the Achrayim is Kedei sheyish lo tinaikis. So much so that a lot of times, if my children ask me a question in the middle of the year, I say it's Kedei sheyish lo tinaikis. It's a great answer for parents to avoid. I say it's not the Leila Seder. In the Leila Seder, I am mechuyev to answer you, but not during the year. Anyway, that's my perverse thing. Okay, now, Bekitzer, we have like this. Based on this Rambam, we can understand what's happening and what's going on in this minig, and why. And similarly, all these achrayim are pointing to already from early on, shtelling zu often a Gemara, and that is like this. The night of Pesach is all about the children. The Seder night is when we do many strange things with one goal in mind, to get the children to notice and to ask, to get them into it. The purpose of this is to fulfill the main mitzvah of the night. Yitzias Mitzrayim, the mitzvah of Zeichel Yitzias Mitzrayim lies behind many mitzvahs. The reason for this, says the Chinuch, is Yitzias Mitzrayim was testimony that there's a Hashem Yisbarach who runs the world, and that he can change what he wants when necessary, as he did in Mitzrayim. Elsewhere, the Chinuch writes that the reason why Yitzias Mitzrayim is related to so many mitzvahs is that doing a variety of activities with this concept in mind, it becomes part of us, the chashivas of this historic event of what happened in Mitzrayim. So maybe the Leil HaSeder, what we're trying to do with so many different things, and momentarily I'm going to give a short list, all these strange different things, is to get the kids into it, to ask questions, and then questions inspire, the adults are supposed to give answers and discuss what happened. This is what's going on in this Gemara Pesachim, and this is the Pshat and the Rambam. L'mashal, you start with karpas. Right away in the beginning, it's what's going on from washing before eating vegetables. Then we don't make a bracha. Then we dip the vegetable into salt water, and we eat less than a kazayis. Then afterwards you break the matzah yachatz. Then you lift the kaira before halachah anya. Then you switch the language at the end from Aramaic back to Hebrew. What's going on here? Then some people remove the kaira before saying the gagada. Then you give children wine. You don't necessarily do it. And then you remove the table. All these different things. Was tutzachta? The answer is, there's many reasons given for all these different minhagim, and there's many. Each one could be their own shear. I'm not going down that rabbit hole, don't worry. But the point is that some people say it's to get the children curious, and it leads to discussions of Mitzrayim and all the miracles that took place here. And this is what is going on behind the stealing of Afikoman. So it's a very simple thing. So my approach that I'm trying to mention over here is it's Avada, the Sefer Mil Davis from Ramagolis Schlesinger. He has a Gavaldic discussion to be Miyashiv this guy was complaining to him, it's stealing. And the answer is you could answer based on all these sources a much more pasha than Kuda what's going on over here. Lamashal is another strange custom. Chida writes at the Seder that he attended during his famous travels, a servant circled the kaira around the head of each male at the Seder 3 times. Like we do kaparis, and people trace this minig. It's an early minig. What's going on? Again, it's all to get the kids into it. Now, we're not going to go into a long list of listing out the Gedolim, what the Gedolim did at their Seder, but it's interesting to note, someone just recently asked me, what was the Seder like by various Gedolim? So I said, look, if you look in various sources, you see many Gedolim, they geared their Seder to the children. I believe I saw the Chassam Sofer, he was very makbid to gear to the children and others. So this person told me, a friend of mine, Rabbinish Ginsburg, so he tells me, Rabbi Victor Neventhal, from what he heard from reliable sources, it basically is at the Seder, he stops around Avadim Ayinu time, and he tells the story of Mitzrayim for about an hour, including singing Pari B'Pajama B'Emtza Laila, which he was told to Rav Alter's family during the Shiva. They got a lot of another, and then they read the Haggadah. And the point is, you will find this not necessarily the Pari B'Pajama story, but this nakuda of gearing it to the children and speaking to the children. Many different gedolim did this. It's a long list of gedolim that did this. Now, avada, if you have all full-fledged adults that you can have deep conversations, Seder. But that's really what the Seder is about, according to strictly from a lot of the different sources. Okay. Lamaisa, even though you're stealing, are there other gedolim that held that you could steal? So interestingly enough, from the family, the Chavetz Chaim, they say the Chavetz Chaim was not makbid and he let them steal. Even though I brought down Rosh Hashanah Zalman was against it, someone, Reb Dava Baran, who had a very interesting relationship with Rosh Hashanah Zalman, he was a very big machmir. He did allow his children. Rabbi Vignan Neventhal says he did not understand Rosh Hashanah Zalman and this prat, and he says, Adarabba, it encourages us. It's not about keeping the children to encouraging them to steal. It's keep them awake, like I mentioned. Okay, Lamashal, we're looking for Tamim behind this. So the Chavas Yor, even though he's rather against it, we quoted, but he says it's the Chavav HaMitzvah, and we're going to explain that in what is the Chavav HaMitzvah. There's a Nekuda, cherish mitzvahs. What does this even mean? So there's an interesting tshuva. Tshuva's Torah Lishma, which we now know is really written by the Ben Ish Chai. And basically what happens is, it seems there was a Talmid Chacham, he visited his family at the Seder, and they put out a stack of matzahs at the beginning of when they say the Haggadah, so everyone could have matzah when they're saying the Haggadah, and everyone grabbed it, and he didn't understand what's going on. He got very upset, and he was told, no, it's to show the love for the mitzvah. See, he came from a different type of world. Maybe he was more yektish or more proper, that they didn't do such things. And the point was, based on the Gemara Chulin, we find that there's something of showing the chavivas for mitzvahs. Okay, so this could be pshat in the Chavas Yar, and others in the other source that I said that a few times already, the Noid Kitzon Yosef, where he's very pro it. He says simple, like I mentioned, they're awake, and then they ask questions. So this is it's a trick on the kids. It gets them to be into the Seder. Okay, so but the point is that the simple, it's not such a complex thing. This is what's going on over here. And just two more Nakudas over here. My friend who was nifter sadly earlier this year, Rav Shalom Jacobs, once I was talking to him about Afikoman, so he tells me, there's a Yid Rav Moshe Wexler in his back of a Sefer Berachas Moshe published in 1902. He has a reason, and it's a simple reason, is because basically one of the things is in Afikoman, especially in certain circles, they're very concerned they have to eat it by a certain time. So you're scared you're going to forget about it. You're going to get orangutan in the Seder, too involved in the Seder. So this is what better way you have a shomer is the kid is going to constantly remind you because he wants to make sure he gets his reward. This is a cute reason found in the Schiber from Moshe Wexler, who was an interesting yid in America in the early 1900s. Not for now. Okay. One last reason that I came across looking is from Reb Shimon Schwab. Reb Shimon Schwab, Yekish Yid, so he writes like this: I personally do not care for the term stealing the matzah. It's un-Jewish to steal, even Afikoman. Not only that, is there stealing? Now he says what I call it hiding the matzah, to be used later as Afikoman, which is called hidden. So basically, you just got to switch the term. They're hiding the matzah. Now he says, And then he says a cute mahalach in this story. He says like this: we know there's deeper meanings behind many minhagim. So Jewish parents used to play with their children in their games. They would have some type of Torah lesson. Okay, so what's going on over here? The meaning of yachatz. When we break this matzah into a larger and smaller piece, with each piece being used for a special purpose, there's also something symbolic. The smaller piece, the lechamayni, poor man's bread, is left at the seder plate along with the marach harosis. However, the larger piece is hidden away from Afikoman by the children, who will ask for a reward for his return and then eaten at the end of the meal. It says his father told him that the smaller pizza of matzah, the lechamayni, represents olam hazeh with all its trials and tribulations. This piece is left on the seder plate along with the matzah, with the marach harosis, reflecting life in this world with all the sweet and bitter experiences. However, the large main piece, which is hidden away during the seder to be eaten after the meal, represents olam haba, which is hidden from us during our lives in this world. The eating of this piece after the meal, when one is full and it's symbolic to our reward in Olam Haba, which can be attained only if we're full of the mitzvahs and life of Torah and mitzvahs v'chulu. And this is when the children ask for the reward, giving it up. It's symbolic for our reward in Olam Haba, which is granted by HaKadosh Baruch Hu if we earned it. This is a beautiful reason that Reb Shimon Schwab said over from his father about it. Okay. Anyway, in short, as I demonstrated right now, there are Makairis, possibly even in a Gemara, about this minig of Afikoman. Okay. Now, I just would like to discuss for a few more minutes another minig that relates to Afikoman, which also I found very interesting, which is some people have this minig that after Pesach, they make sure to save a piece of the Afikoman. I've even seen in auctions, they sell a certain Gedolim, the Afikoman piece of a certain Gadol. What's going on? So Mashal, there's a memoir, back to memoirs. I've quoted this memoir in the past. Pauline Weingroff writes, in some Jewish homes, a single round matzah was hung on the wall by a little thread and left there as a memento. Okay. And other different autobiographical accounts mention such a thing. The Munkacher Rebbe used to give out a piece of the Afikoman, and people would save this piece from this Afikoman of his all year round. Okay. The Ma'isa, everything goes back to a Magen Avram. There's a Magen Avram in Hilchos Yontif that says, Im kein mutter limkoif chatichos Afikoman bepesach l'tloisoi deloi ki yesh machmirin. A very cryptic sentence, not in Hilchos Pesach, but in Hilchos Yontif. He says such a thing that you can hang the Afikoman and make a hole in it with a knife on Yontif to hang it. What's going on here? What's he referring to? Similar to Yaakov Reisher, we quoted him earlier today, the Chak Yankiv, he also brings down that there's a custom to break off a piece of Afikoman and hang it. And he points to this Magen Avram. Now, but why? What's going on behind this? So the answer is that hanging the Afikoman, you're avoiding the issue that might be that otherwise there's a problem of Bezayin. It's a Bezayin for the Eichlin. Okay. L'maisa, why are we holding this? Says Rav Reisher, it's not an issue because it's to remind us again of Yetzias Mitzrayim. He says his father and his Rabbeim, they also did keep this minig of keeping behind a small piece of Afikoman. So this gets back to what we were telling with the Rambam and the Chinuch, that there's so much going on to remind us of Yetzias Mitzrayim. So we're keeping something from what happens at the Leil HaSeder. I'm going to see another interesting point about that very shortly. Okay. Now, L'maisa, the Chavas Yair, he brings down that the reason for the minig to hang it is again Zeichel Yetzias Mitzrayim, but the question is, what's going on? Is there really an issue of Bizei Eichlin which the Chak Yankov is raising? So there's a Rabbi Victor Neventhal where he talks about in general the concept of Bizei Eichlin. He says that bread, which is what's pshat in the general Isser of Bizei Eichlin, it's because the bread is a special gift that Hashem gives us from Olam Haba, so you can't use it in any embarrassing way. However, when one's using it for the mitzvah of Zeichel Yetzias Mitzrayim, so maybe that could be why it's not Bizei Eichlin, and it could be that's really what Rav Reisher means. Okay. Anyway, the point is that people started carrying it. But not only al Zeichel Yetzias Mitzrayim, it became a major skula. L'mashal, the Chavas Yair again brings down that people used to carry it when they would travel. What's the source for it? So there are early sources. We're not going to give the long list of the different svarim and that talk about all the various schools svarim. We'll just mention one at the end. But I have a dear friend, Benzi Eichhorn from Toronto, put out before he got married a kuntris tracing all different aspects of this minig of the Afikoman, calling it Zmiris Tzion, a very nice booklet where he traces all different aspects of this minig. Now, interestingly enough, one famous personality, which we know he actually used the skula of using this when he travels and it helped, was Sir Moses Montefiore. In his autobiography, we have the boat was in a terrible storm, and they threw a piece of Afikoman into the sea, and he was saved, and his family on that day that he was saved. For his family made a suda always about it, but we see that they actually use this segula, and there's other documentation about it. Just to mention one other maramakam about it, the Ema Barim Samecha in his incredible Tshuva Sefer, he says that Afikoman has all the dinim of a carbon pesach. So now it should come out that one has a problem of leaving behind one piece. So rather, if you're leaving behind a piece, the segula, people in Eretz Yisrael should use a regular piece of matzah. Okay, Lamaisa, he brings down the Yosef Aimitzer writes that he made sure not to lose one crumb of Afikoman. Okay, but say there all these different types of different aspects of the minig we're not going to go into. Just to mention two more marakaimis and to conclude is like this. Sometimes we find we have a minig and then people make fun of it and they save it for traveling and everything. Okay, Lamashal for this minig Afikoman, so it's clear the Magen Avraham is even bringing in, he's not saying against it, and so we see it's an earlier minig, but the extension and what's behind it, and that people end up using it for all types of things, saving them from when they're traveling. Do we have earlier sources for this? Okay, so I've quoted this in the past. This is a fascinating work. Basically, in 2010, a fascinating manuscript of Reb Chaim Vital was published for the first time, called Sefer HaPulos. Reb Chaim Vital is best known as being the great Talmud of the Arizal, expert in Kabbalah, etc. And he brings in this Sefer HaPulos all types of segulos and different things that he himself many times used for different situations, and it's a whole longer drasha what's behind the Sefer HaPulos. I've written about it in Hebrew and English. We spoke a little bit about it in the episode about LeDavid, and the point is that he brings down this became it's a famous school of Sefer, and interestingly enough, today the Sefer is sold page by page for thousands and thousands of dollars, because it's even the Sefer, it's not only that it's a school of Sefer, but the pages are looked at as a school. Okay. Anyway, Shteit der Chaim Vital over here in page Reish Mem Aleph. If you're in the sea traveling and there's the waters are going very stark, what do? You take matzah shmur from the Afikoman, throw it in the water, and you will be saved. Okay. So we see this minig and him mentioning this minig, so it's pretty early on. Okay. One last aspect of the Afikoman is that that Rav Shik brings down, we keep it to burn it with the chametz in order to remind us that the famous din that carbon pesach, you can't have any leftovers. So we keep it to remind us, and we burn it with it. I don't know how prevalent that minig is. There are other sources that they do keep it for the end of the year and to burn it with the chametz. Anyway, these are some of them in Hagen behind Afikoman. These are the side things. Avada Afikoman has a lot of halachic famous shilas discussions that not such as you have to worry about chatzos and you're filling yourself. And then, of course, there's a great question: what does the word Afikoman even mean? But these are for a different lecture, shir, not for now. But this is we just given a little bit into some of them in Hagam Klal Yisrael. Number one, that the children stealing it and everything, there is makayos from it, possibly even Al Pi Pashab Shad in standing in Gemara. Obviously, there are people against it. This is always the case that we find two groups of people looking at something, and one could come out completely different opposite. It could bother people, and we're talking about very big gedolim that are sensitive to these type of things. And other people we're able to find the deeper meanings to it, and that it's okay. That's one minig. And the second thing we also mentioned is that there's a minig, even a pshat in the Magen Avraham, that people kept Afikoman, a little piece, out of school for all different types of things, which can be traced in different sources of this farm.
Amazing. Thank you very much. You mentioned keeping pieces of Afikoman. One of my close family members was many Haggadahs. You open up any one of their Haggadahs and it's full of matzah crumbs. There's pieces of matzah, Afikoman, being kept as a shmira, whatever the source and makar for that minig is. And as you speak about this, whether stealing is a good thing or a bad thing, maybe we could do an episode one time about throwing pekalach at a chassan, right? Which I know also, is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing?
The extension of the minig at a bar mitzvah bacher, and yes, pizza oichlin and the chassan. Yeah. That is a whole shear. Yeah.
Okay, so if you want to make any type of dedication or sponsorships for Rabbi Brut's work, please reach out to me or to Rabbi Brut, and we're happy to discuss other options. And with that, we wish you and all the listeners a Chakasha v'Sameach. Again, if you're still listening and you want to get Rabbi Brut's email with interesting new books and Sfarim available, please send him an email, eliezer@gmail.com.